Imagine a career as a performing pianist that spanned nearly 100 years, not as a hobbyist, not occasionally, as a concert artist on stage in front of audiences, performing at the highest level. Ruth Slenczynska began concertizing at the age of 4. She was still performing and recording in her late 90s. She was, without question, the greatest piano prodigy of the 20th century. And on April 22nd, 2026, at the age of 101, we lost her. I want to take a moment today to celebrate who she was, because if you love the piano, you need to know this woman's history. As a child, she studied with Rachmaninoff, as well as a who's who of monumental pianists of the early 20th century. She was the last living pupil of Sergei Rachmaninoff, a direct breathing connection to one of the greatest composers and pianists who ever lived. And she carried that connection with joy, with generosity, and with an absolute standard of musical beauty that never wavered. Not in her 20s, not in her 80s, not at 97 when she released a new album on Decca Classics. She was my teacher. She was a friend to my father, and she was one of the most remarkable human beings I have ever known. She was born on January 15th, 1925, over a century ago in Sacramento, California. Her father was a Polish violinist, and he recognized something in his young daughter almost immediately. By age 3, she was already practicing piano. By 4, she was studying in Europe. By 6, she had debuted in Berlin, and by 7 years old, she was performing with full orchestra in Paris. But here's what makes this truly staggering. The teachers she studied with, we're not talking about good teachers or even great ones. We're talking about the absolute titans of the piano world. She studied with Arthur Schnabel, with Egon Petri, with Alfred Cortot and Nadia Boulanger, with Joseph Hoffman, one of the greatest pianists who ever lived, and she studied with Sergei Rachmaninoff himself. She was the last living pupil of Rachmaninoff. Think about what that means. A direct living link to one of the most beloved composers and pianists of the 20th century. And now that link is gone. That chain that connects us back to that era passed through Ruth Slenczynska, and she carried it beautifully. Now, her life wasn't without tremendous pain, and she never hid from that. She wrote about it openly in her memoir, Forbidden Childhood. Published in 1957, her father forced her to practice for hours and hours as a young child, sometimes even before breakfast. The pressure of being a prodigy, being pushed beyond what any child should endure, it eventually became too much. At 15 years old, she walked away. She left home. She stepped away from performing entirely and enrolled at UC Berkeley. Now, here's what I find remarkable, and this really gets to who Ruth was as a person, is that despite all of that, she was not a bitter woman, not even close. The joyful spirit she exuded was particularly remarkable considering what she had been through. She chose to take everything that was hard about her life and channel it into something beautiful. That takes extraordinary strength of character. She returned to performing in 1951 after more than a decade away, and she never stopped. I need to tell you about what she was like as a teacher, because this is what I want you to take away. She held master classes at her home, a wonderful room with vaulted ceilings, 2 magnificent grand pianos, including a Steinway concert grand, and watching her teach was a revelation. She was a fraction of my father's size, and yet she could produce a massive, overwhelming sound by using her entire arms, her entire body, in a way that was completely natural to her. One of the things she drilled into her students, and I've never forgotten this, is how to shape a musical phrase to sound like the human voice. She would say, as the musical line rises, gradually get louder. As it descends, get softer. It imitates the natural ebb and flow of singing. It sounds simple, but when you truly internalize it, it transforms the way you play. And then there was her absolute standard of purity. She would never allow herself to play any note on the piano that wasn't pure and refined and beautiful. Never. Not in the lesson, not in the conversation, not even informally. She simply refused to plant bad habits, even casually, because she knew that once something becomes ingrained in your playing, it is almost impossible to eradicate it. Ruth lived by that truth completely every single day. Let me share one specific memory that I think captures her perfectly. During a master class at her home, one of her students, Jerry Miley, a colorful Southern gentleman who has since passed, kept asking her to play the Chopin G minor Ballade. He persisted. Ruth kept dismissing him. She said she hadn't been practicing it. If she played it, she would have to play it slowly. That was unacceptable to her. But Jerry wouldn't give up. He kept asking, and finally, at the very end of the class, she relented. She sat down and played the entire G minor Ballade under tempo, deliberately, beautifully, with complete control and refinement at every single note. It wasn't a performance, it was a statement. This is who Ruth Slenczynska was. She never compromised on beauty, not even for a moment, not even when no one was watching. My father, Morton Estrin, had deep respect for Ruth's playing. And for me personally, one of the things that drew me to study with her was her incredible Decca recording of the Liszt Etudes. If you haven't heard it, you can find it and listen to it. I left a link below. It's extraordinary piano playing and musicianship. She taught at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, for decades, shaping generations of pianists. And in 2022, at 97 years old, she released a brand new album for Decca Classics called My Life in Music, featuring works by Rachmaninoff, Chopin, Barber, and others. Her first album in nearly 60 years at 97. She turned 100 on January 15th, 2025, and she was still Ruth, still that joyful, giving, passionate spirit right until the end. We have lost something irreplaceable. Not just a great pianist, not just a great teacher. We've lost a living connection to music history that can never be restored. But what Ruth Slenczynska leaves behind, the students she shaped, the recordings she made, the principles she lived by, those don't disappear. Those live in every pianist who ever heard her play or sat across from her at one of those two grand pianos. I'm so grateful that I was one of them. And I hope that by sharing her story with you today, a little piece of her spirit stays alive in this world. I am grateful for everything I learned from Ruth Slenczynska. But most of all, having been able to know such a kind, joyful person with such a giving spirit, I have left a link to her recording legacy in the description. If this moved you, please share it so people can experience this extraordinary woman. Thank you. I'm Robert Estrin.